Hello everybody and welcome back to Tehillim Treasures, where every week in Mitzvah Shem we're going to learn 2 kapitles of Tehillim, get an idea of what's going on, what was David HaMelech talking about, and how we can relate to it. We are sponsored by 2 exceptional organizations every week. The first is Chazaq. Chazaq is an organization that has provided incredible Torah content, especially these last few years when we needed it, to be able to connect to the Rabbeinu Shalom, to better appreciate the Torah, to better appreciate our privilege to be the Am HaNivchar, the chosen nation. Additionally, Chazaq's main work is to help children that are in public schools go to yeshivas, and you can contact them if you know of a child that is in need of a yeshiva at PSTY public school to yeshiva at chazaq.org. Our second sponsor is chickensforshabbos.com, where every single week there are those families of Melamdim, Rebbeim's children, Rebbeim's wives, who do not have enough to put food on the table, for agunis, for women who are nebuch alone, for grushes, for women who are divorced and they don't have where to turn, and they need food and they need clothing, they need people to help them with utilities and so much more. Please be generous in your donation to chickensforshabbos.com. This week we are going to look at 2 prakim, Perek Chav Aleph and Perek Chav Beis. Perek Chav Aleph, the 21st chapter of Tehillim, it speaks about David HaMelech and Mashiach having to deal with their enemies. David HaMelech asks Hashem, Tishiseimoi kisanur eish le'eis panecha. You will make them like a fiery furnace at the time of your anger. And the Radak explains that just as when you put logs into a fire, you put wooden logs into a fire, they're completely consumed, so too we ask Hashem, allow nothing whatsoever to remain from our enemies. And the Alshich HaKadosh says another explanation. He says that while it is referring to our enemies, he says it's a different enemy. He brings the Gemara, it's a famous Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara in Gittin, Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis, talks about Titus HaRasha. Titus was the Roman general who destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha. And Titus was the one who destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash. And when he destroyed Yerushalayim, the Gemara says on his deathbed, Titus asked for his body to be cremated. Why? He did not want anybody to be able to humiliate or embarrass or disgrace his body, and he wanted that God not be able to find him. He wanted his ashes to be scattered over the 7 seas. And this way, Titus, the Kofer, the heretic, said, God will not be able to find me. And the Gemara says that Titus was unable to avoid justice because he thought he'd be able to escape. Says the Gemara, very powerful. His ashes are gathered every single day, and he is reincarnated. There is a Tchias HaMesim of sorts for Titus. He is then judged again, burnt again, and his ashes are once again scattered over the 7 seas until tomorrow, when he will face judgment once more in front of the Borei Olam, the creator of the world. And David HaMelech is saying that Tishiseimoi kisanur eish. He's asking that our enemies be punished new every single day. It's encouraging to the children of Hashem that when we are persecuted, that the Rabbeinu Shalom has our back. That the Rabbeinu Shalom, kaviyachol, not to ever compare the two, but just as if you're on the playground and there's a bully that's picking on you. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that or you've seen it, but it can be very traumatic for a child. But if the child goes and he gets his older brother, and his older brother takes care of the bully, the child feels so much better. And there's a lesson to be learned here, and the lesson is that we must realize that our enemies will not be able to hide from ultimate retribution from the Rabbeinu Shalom. And the truth is that if we want to take the matter to our heart, if we want to internalize the message, we can't hide either. When we go through a tzara, when we go through difficulty, and very often people are saying Tehillim because there is a tzara. And if we're now thinking about what the words of Tehillim really mean, we have to ask ourselves, why is this tzara happening to me? What is the message for me? Nothing happens in a vacuum. There's a reason why we're going through something. It might seem that somebody else is your enemy and he's making you go through this, but ultimately it's Hashem that's causing you that pain. Why? What did I do? What did I do wrong? Where can I improve? How can I make my life a better and more meaningful and more purposeful life? Everybody has to know that you get what's coming to you. And there's a nice humorous story that took place with Rav Zorach Braverman. Rav Zorach Braverman was a big tzaddik in Yerushalayim, and he would deliver a shir in yeshiva in Yerushalayim. And after the shir, Rav Zorach was so exhausted, he had a long walk home. He would lay down, take a little bit of a rest, a little nap, and then he would walk home after the shir. Many Bachrim went home for Shabbos, so there were plenty of beds available in the dormitory. And one time, Rav Zorach, after his shir, he goes to sleep, and he rests in a Bachr's bed. In the meantime, somebody who was upset with that Bachr went over to that Bachr in the middle of the night, and he gave him a good zetz, and he knocked him pretty hard. He had no idea that he was beating up his own Rosh Yeshiva. Well, so that boy who had gone home didn't really go home. The boy who was supposed to sleep in the bed that night knew that the guy was going to come for him that night, and therefore he had slept in another bed. But Reb Zorach did not turn around. Why not? A, he didn't want to embarrass the boy. And B, he thought to himself, if I'm getting a patch, the patch is coming from the Ribbono Shel Olam. It may have seemed like an accident. There are no accidents in this world. And if we take the matter to heart, we'll receive the message, we'll be able to improve, and hopefully, Mitzvah Hashem, that sorrow, that difficulty will go away. We now move on to the next kapitel of Tehillim, Kapitel Chof Beis. Kapitel Chof Beis is a famous, well-known kapitel, even though it's a very long chapter, but the title of it is quite well-known. Lamnatseach al ayeles hashachar mizmor leDavid. The 22nd chapter of Tehillim speaks about Esther Hamalka. And there is a minig on Tainis Esther for people to say this kapitel, because we know the story well. Esther Hamalka was approached by Mordechai HaTzadik, and he said, you have to go to Achashverosh, and you have to beg for your people. You have to ask the king to spare your nation. And Esther Hamalka said, fine. You go and fast for 3 days, v'ani v'nareisai otzum kain, and I and my maidens will also do that. And then Esther Hamalka, Chazal tell us, as she was walking, and if you can imagine this, it's so beautiful and so powerful, as Esther Hamalka is walking to greet Achashverosh. She hadn't seen him in the longest time. She was coming unannounced to the king. She was risking her life. And she whispered this kapitel. She cried out to Hashem, saying these very words, to ask Achashverosh for mercy and compassion for the Jewish people. It's a very, very awesome moment. And every Purim we celebrate that Klal Yisrael is surrounded and we are hounded and we are threatened by the nations of the world. But the Ribbono Shel Olam does not leave us even in times of hastara, even in times of hiddenness. We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always going to be there. With Ruach HaKodesh, David HaMelech saw what was going to happen. David HaMelech lived hundreds of years before Esther Hamalka. But he knew that one day Esther Hamalka will go to Achashverosh. And he composed this kapitel so that centuries later, she would have what to say and what to pray to the Ribbono Shel Olam. In 1954, there was a great Knessia Gedola. We haven't had a Knessia Gedola in a long time, but the Gedolim of the world would get together to discuss the important matters at hand. And Rav Aaron Kotler was brought in from America to speak at the Knessia Gedola. And he was going to give a shir in Panovich Beis Medrash on Shabbos morning prior to Musaf. The Panovich Rav, who was Rabbi Yosef Shlomo Kahneman, introduced Rav Aaron, and he quoted a very powerful Yalkut on Parshas Chukas. And he said, the Pasuk tells us, V'sarav es hapara le'einav es oira, ve'es b'sara, ve'es dama. Someone shall burn the cow before his eyes, its hide, and its flesh, and its blood. And the Yalkut tells us that this cow is referring to the Beis HaMikdash and the king's home, which were destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha. That's the para. And its hide, its flesh, and its blood refers to the homes of Yerushalayim, which were also destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha when he destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. And the Bayis HaGadol is referring to the Beis HaMedrash of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, where they spoke of the greatness of Hashem. The Yalkut continues, and the Yalkut says that the cedar wood, and the hyssop branch, and the crimson thread that were mentioned in the next verse of the Pasuk in Parshas Chukas, when we're talking about the Para Aduma, that's referring to the great three tzaddikim, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who were thrown into the fire by Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha. And the Panovich Rav raised his voice, and he thundered, the best from Klal Yisrael, the greatest of Klal Yisrael, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were the tzaddikim of Klal Yisrael. But the sparks that came out of the bonfire, they burnt those who tried to burn Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And 2 verses later it says, the Osaf Ishtar Eis Efer Hapara B'Makom Tar, a pure man shall gather the ash of the cow in a pure place. This refers to the Ribbono Shel Olam. And the Ribbono Shel Olam gathers the ashes of Klal Yisrael in the pure city of Yerushalayim. And the Panovich Rav said, it's right after the Milchama. The Jewish people had been burnt. The Jewish people had been virtually annihilated. But the Ribbono Shel Olam gathers those ashes together. And the sparks come out from those ashes and burn our enemies. Rav Aaron, the Panovich Rav, was speaking about Rav Aaron Kotler, was one of those that spread a new fire that would pave a path for Klal Yisrael to be rebuilt. The Panovich Rav could have been speaking about himself as well, because he too was from the rebuilders of Klal Yisrael. The Jewish people are always threatened. We personally go through threats, but we must understand that if we are righteous and we do tshuva and we do everything we're supposed to, then the fire will come forth from us and will protect us. Until next time, be well.